the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And as we do, we should remember John McCain. Think about the Landis family from Hanson, who, as you all know, has undergone quite a week with a plane crash. Also, if you keep in your thoughts and prayers, Marilyn Greno, mother of Chief Greno, wife of former Chief Greno, who passed away this week. And there will be a viewing at Blanchard's, I believe, from 4 to 8 on Thursday, and a funeral at 12 noon, funeral mass 12 noon at Holy Ghost on Friday. Also, Chief Benton's stepmother died yesterday, Spring Benton. Their arrangements haven't been made yet. But if you could keep all of those people in your thoughts, it would be good. This meeting's being recorded and televised by the local cable company. I'd like a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a kind of a heavy agenda tonight, so we're going to move public forum to the end of the meeting. Approval of meeting minutes, open session July 10th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Open session July 24th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chairman's report, I just have a couple of things to say. I attended the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative Regional Meeting last Wednesday. It was held in Bridgewater. The towns that are in the Prevention Collaborative are Brockton and Rockland, East Bridgewater, Whitman, and Hanson. And it has to do with the opioid crisis, the opioid overdose crisis. I gave a report on behalf of Whitman, Hanson, Will at the meeting, and I'd just like to highlight some of the things that were reported. This is basically a quarterly report about what's going on at Whitman, Hanson, Will. Over the past quarter, new policies were put in place and trainings were conducted with diverse groups of individuals. Students stepped up to be agents of change in their community, and funding was awarded to the coalition providing sustainability for future initiatives. Whitman, Hanson, Will has been, as far as funding is concerned, Whitman, Hanson, Will, as you should recall from our town meeting, has been allocated $6,000 into their budget from the town of Whitman to support the coalition's efforts in the community to conduct outreach and education on the topic of substance use prevention. There have been a couple of Narcan sim labs over the course of 2 days. 212 freshman health students at Whitman Hanson High School were trained in doing Narcan and using Narcan. And that was in partnership with the Hanson Fire Department on overdose prevention. There was also a community event at Shaw's to promote a standing order for Narcan at OSCO. Whitman Hanson students participated in a Be in the Know youth conference. Students from SAD and Our Minds Matter presented to over 150 peers on the topic of mindfulness and alternative coping skills. Students and advisors left feeling empowered and wanted to start a support group at the school for students impacted by addiction within their lives. Further, 10 school nurses were trained on overdose prevention and Narcan administration following the school committee's approval to provide access to Narcan within every school. The Whitman Hanson Will group was also awarded the Helping Traumatized Children Learn professional development opportunity. And that was through a grant provided by the Plymouth County DA's office. All staff will be trained in trauma-informed care for students. I'd like to call your attention also to Thursday night, 2 nights from now. At 6:30 at Massasoit is the annual overdose vigil. When that started a few years ago, they have some speakers, and it's meant to remember those who had to suffer through opioid overdoses and the effect on families. And when it started a few years ago, it may have been 4 or 5 years ago, there were maybe 20 to 30 photographs that were done in a slideshow at the end of the evening, donated by families who were okay with that, who wanted the pictures up. This Thursday night, there'll be 300 photographs in the slideshow. It took background music of, I think, 2 songs 5 years ago. It's going to be, more like an album and a half this time. It's a moving experience. There's usually a good contingent of people from Whitman Hanson that go. And I remind you, if you're free, August 30th, 6:30 at the college. One of the things that's noticeable at the regional opioid meetings, each one of the separate groups gives a report, and usually Dan Connolly gives a report. He wasn't able to be there that night. That's why I had to do it. However, what the different towns, East Bridgewater will give a report, Bridgewater, Rockland, Whitman, Brockton, and the thing that I've noticed over the past number of sessions is that Whitman Hanson really stands out as far as its public high school and its fire department and its police department and its town government as far as raising consciousness around the opioid crisis. We look pretty good with respect to the rest of the people. However, where we lack, where we don't look so hot, is the strength of Rockland Cares and East Bridgewater and East Bridgewater's. They have numbers of parents and community members who participate in this coalition. We haven't been able to excite that yet in our citizens, even though we know that Whitman is not free from the opioid epidemic. So it would be good if we had some more of that. But I'm thankful really thankful for the high school, the police department, the fire department. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Town administrator's report.
Thank you. A couple of things. Pleased to announce that through Assistant Town Administrator Lisa Green's efforts, we've received an additional $5,400 grant for recycling sustainability. That's in addition to the $55,000 we received last year. And she has also managed to work with the DPW to develop a recycling program for clothing waste. There is an interesting operation out there where a company known as Simple Recycling provides bags to households. There's no cost to us. There's no service operation on our part. The bags are left out with your recycling, and they're picked up by a van operated by this company. Unlike recycling, which is now costing us money, there is some value in the cloth product, and whatever nominal earnings come from it will be a credit to the town. Do you know when they're going to be launching that, Lisa?
About December 1st.
All right, September? December. So around December 1st, we should begin seeing those bags.
Not bad.
Hopefully it'll help. And a few other things. Treasurer Collector Carter will be hosting a town municipal employee retirement forum in the town hall on September 15th. All employees enrolled in Plymouth County and employees from other towns who may have an interest in participating are welcome to come. It will be held after the close of business. The Board of Library Trustees has announced today that they appointed Marcy Walsh O'Connor Library Director. She replaces Andrea Rounds, who left us for greener pastures.
Do you have any information on the new library director? Any?
Marcy has been with us about 2 years as the assistant director. She's well-liked and well-respected there. She's also provides some services to Abington. So she's well-rounded and will hopefully do well in this assignment. Our health insurance group, Mayflower Municipal Health Group, will be introducing a vision plan for members of the health group. It is a no cost to the town. It's an ancillary plan that employees can opt into. I think the fee is somewhere between $5 and $6 a month, and it's an added benefit for employees. We also received $17,726 for Hurricane Sandy.
How much did we spend?
A lot more. That came in last week. So apparently FEMA's never really in a rush.
Hurricane Sandy.
Hurricane Sandy. And then finally, I had a conversation with Chief Benton last 2 weeks ago about a class action that's occurring around the nation over opioid manufacturers. It is similar in some respects to the litigation that occurred with the smoking producers, the tobacco companies. And I had sought advice from counsel about 1.5 years ago when we were first approached. At that point, the recommendation was, we don't really know what the state's going to do, whether they're going to step in as they did with tobacco. Don't make any commitments at this time. Well, I spoke to our associate House counsel last week and asked for the materials so we could review and see if it now makes sense for us to step in on this program. It's a class action suit. Our attorneys will receive 25% of the proceeds, and the 75% will be divvied up at some method or formula to be determined at a later date. It's also possible that the state could step in and take over that distribution. But he did send me a little bit of information on it. I got this last week, and somehow between now and our next meeting, I'll look through it and make some recommendations. And that's what I have on my report for today.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Okay, budget review. Going to turn it over to Scott Lambiase and to lead the discussion with the Finance Committee.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming, guys and ladies, Finance Committee. So the point of this meeting, I guess, is sort of we want to put a working group together, as we've discussed, with some members of Finance Committee, a couple members of this board. I think we had talked about perhaps, hopefully, someone from School Committee, a couple department heads, Frank, of course. And what we wanted to come up with, at least in my opinion, or in my thoughts, was a sort of a formula that we're going to follow or policies or some procedures that we'll follow this year and then hopefully every year going forward as far as how we're going to deal with the budget. So I think, things that would come out of it would be sort of timelines and kickoff dates and, what is it that you're expecting to see? What is the information that you're getting? Is it the right information? Are we duplicating efforts? What are we getting for information and what are we looking for? And, how can we work together to do it as far as, are you looking for us to sort of come up with some sort of recommendation for you? Or are we going to wait for you to come up with your votes and give us a recommendation that then we can look at and vote on? Or do we want to do it unilaterally? So I'm not really sure what your visions are of it. My hopes was to put something together, this group, meet probably next month, at least a couple times. I don't expect to have to meet a lot on this. I think we can come up with some good procedures, some deliverables early on, get it done. And I think other things may come out of this or may come out, I think, as we start working with this. Some other issues may come up that we can address. I think obviously as we go down into the budget season and start working it out, we're going to find that there's some issues that, maybe are glaring that I haven't thought of or that you haven't thought of, but it'd be nice to address them. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I know we spoke briefly.
Well, I think, we're definitely encouraged by the opportunity to meet jointly with the Board of Selectmen as much as possible. I think we need to definitely develop some better communications, and I'm here with the Vice Chair, Dave Cordero, but certainly invite the other members of the Finance Committee to chime in with any ideas. Maybe in subsequent meetings, too, that we could have an opportunity for all of the Finance Committee to be participating in these joint meetings.
Well, I think the meetings will be a public meeting. They will be open to the public. I think our first charge when we do meet will be to give ourselves a quick mission statement, so to speak, appoint the chair, and then we're going to conduct the meetings like any other public meeting. So the public is welcome to come, obviously, and then it'll be up to the chair and up to the group itself to decide how much participation we want from the outside. But
Sure.
yeah, absolutely. I think anybody on both sides of the table, including school, I'm encouraged to have them there and have them participate.
So some of the other parts of it too, I mean, for this meeting as well, to follow up a little bit on the stakeholders meeting, is that part of our agenda for tonight, to find out, what's the next steps, basically from, I thought it was a very positive meeting. I thought we had some really good, feedback from the community. And, I sent an email to Dr. Tarsi to, basically follow up on my general comments about the financial condition of the town. More or less leaving the formulation of the questions to members of the community and obviously the students that she's working with for this program. But I think that's going to give us some valuable insight, and as Carl mentioned on numerous occasions, to find out what kind of a community we really want to be and where we want to, put our assets.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I wish I could have been there. It just didn't work for our schedules. But I think what's coming out of that meeting will be a lot of long-term, sort of the big picture stuff. And what this committee and what this working group right now, I just want to sort of focus on, let's look at this short term, what we need right now to get into the budget, how we're not duplicating efforts, what tools we need to get through this stuff. Other things are going to come out of it, and there's all sorts of things that we've discussed and looked at as far as long-term policies and plans and capital plans and procedures that I think come out of our sort of long-term vision and what we're going to do with that. But yeah, absolutely. I think, Carl can, obviously, the chairman can speak more to that than I could.
Yeah, I wrote to Dr. Tarsi also and got back an answer that some comments are trickling in. But remember, she had one of the things I wanted to do tonight was to remind people that the deadline for her, for us to get information to her, input to her, was Labor Day.
Right.
So if we can do that. What I'm hearing Scott saying and what I'm hearing you saying are a little bit different. I think, if I understand Scott, what he wants to do is come up with a sort of a quick working group of people, and not very many, who will meet a few times this is preliminary to our getting together with joint meetings, to meet a few times to set up some guidelines for how we're going to conduct business for the rest of the year.
I think that's a great idea,
You
yeah,
know, just set up the framework.
right.
Quick and
And-
dirty meetings, a couple of meetings with
That's
6 or
exactly how
7
we want
people. Yeah.
And I think we've discussed this, on other occasions about how the policies and procedures are really going to be born out of the Board of Selectmen. I mean, for our perspective, we are certainly available and committed, obviously, being here tonight and meeting probably through the summer to work on this budget. I think that we'll certainly have a participatory role, but I think, formulating the policy and procedures should be under the purview of the Board of Selectmen, to answer your question you asked earlier.
Yeah, that's, unfortunately, we don't want to do it in a vacuum. though.
Right,
We
absolutely,
need-
yeah.
It wouldn't do us any good for us to come up with something that you can't work with.
Right.
So first step, come up with a few people that are going to meet to
And
come
I
up
did.
with some guidelines. So
and-
Brian had mentioned to me that he wanted to be involved in it as a select person, and you obviously. So you guys would sort of be the select people on it. We need a couple of.
Yep,
you don't
we're
have to give
meeting
it-
after this meeting, and we're
Okay.
going to develop two people.
couple from you.
For this committee.
You'll contact the school committee
Yep,
and get somebody.
Frank will be involved,
Right.
or Lisa, or both.
Yeah, Jeff, the superintendent indicated interest in that,
Okay.
but I'm pretty sure we're going to have Christine Sukal
Yep.
very involved in that process.
And I think it'd be good to have one or two citizens, for want of a better word, community members.
Yep.
I have a couple of ideas. I can share them with you later. And get that committee together and get a meeting pretty soon.
Yeah, my goal would be that we meet for, sometime mid-September, second, third week, put it together. If that works for you. I don't know when your schedule is gonna start.
Yeah. We've actually printed out a schedule that started last week, so.
Good, so you're already up and running.
Yeah, so.
Excellent.
Just one
So you have,
clarification.
excuse me, you have a schedule of department heads that are going to come in,
No.
or just for you guys to meet?
Right.
Okay.
Just one
Yeah.
clarification. When it comes to policies and procedures, does the Finance Committee has autonomy in regards to what their policies and procedures are, as long as it doesn't go beyond being a recommending board?
Right.
Is that correct? Okay. The reason I ask that is that, over the past budget season, we, as the meetings go by, members come up with ideas that would, if we can put them all collectively, it would probably be a good outline of how our policies and procedures should be, a formal format to allow for department heads and the Board of Selectmen to, work jointly with the Finance Committee.
One of the other thoughts that I had, and we brought this up before too, is your committee has liaisons for the various town departments, and the Finance Committee has liaisons for the various town departments as well. I would like to see if we could maybe, and you talk about duplicating efforts, I think we need to do more communication and better communication, but if we could actually merge those two, and maybe the liaisons for the various town departments could be CC'd, Finance Committee and Selectmen on communications. I think that would help a lot, especially as we get deeper into the budget cycle. We start meeting with department heads, and talking about budgets. I think more communication would be better, so.
Absolutely.
That's one of the ideas that we wanted to float out there.
On the budget cycle, I think which would be a starter is if, we'll say Frank was to have a department heads meeting and tell each department to look at their future budgets, their needs and their wants, and possibly a way of getting those needs and wants, other than just the easiest thing is raise taxes. But there may be other, because they know their departments, they know what they can and cannot do. They may have ways of possibly using funds that were used for one thing to be able to get some of the needs that they have and they haven't been able to get because there isn't enough funding. They may be able to say, okay, I normally spend X amount on this. If I curtail that a little bit, maybe I can put that towards this because I need that. So, I mean, department heads know their departments. They know every corner of it. And I think that if Frank has a department heads meeting and puts that out there, so when they present a budget to you, you know, and they give you their budget, and they say, okay, I normally spend this, but I think that if I do it this way, I could probably get this piece of equipment or something that I need. Because who knows a department better than the department manager?
Right. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a couple of department head meetings, and it's a really good format, and maybe that is something that the subcommittee could participate in as well, to get a better understanding of how the departments work.
Yeah, good idea. Anybody else? Okay.
So I'll reach out to you. We'll kind of pick up some dates and
Okay,
I'll run with this.
all right. Frank prepared a summary. I don't know if you want to discuss
Yeah, I'd like
that a
to
little
just-
bit?
Yeah, the
Talk
next
quickly
two
about it.
items on the agenda are in response to requests that Frank has had to give kind of an early forecast. And, let's appreciate how early it is.
Yes,
But
definitely.
Frank has done some work.
So you have in your agenda a draft, a very, very rough draft of what an FY20 budget could conceivably be. And then behind those 5 pages, is a pro forma worksheet for 2020. Now, there's no magic associated with this. We simply take our levy limit, we increase it by 2.5%. We then increase our levy by the new growth that is property that's taxable this year that wasn't taxable last year. And that gives us a levy. And the tax levy that we expect to see for 2020 is $26,514,684. Now, in addition to that, you have roughly $11 million plus dollars coming in from all other sources. And then from that money, we operate the town. And that operation includes all of the town functions, including the sewer and water departments in the DPW. That's the way the state looks at the combined total budget. Using the contractual rates that are currently in effect through 2020 for employee salaries for those under collective bargaining agreements at 2%. And then in discussing with Christine Sukow at the school department a couple of weeks ago, we were trying to come up with an idea of what the school budget for 2020 will look like. And based on all available information, she feels it's going to be a 5% increase over the previous year. Now, the 5% in and of itself is not necessarily a backbreaker until you consider that the $23 million that we get from the state for Chapter 70 money last year increased by $100,000. It's minimal. Which means virtually all of the increase will be on the burden of the two towns. So looking at those numbers, if those numbers are correct, we're going to see an increase of about $1.5 million from the schools. We're going to see an increase across the board on education because we're also going to have South Shore Voc. Norfolk Aggie, which is a particularly unique problem because we don't know what we're going to have for students, arguably until April, but actually not until September. all students who want to attend Norfolk Aggie have to apply by April 1st. We're supposed to get a notice of all those applicants. Sometimes we do. But I don't know who's enrolled in Norfolk Aggie until late July, early August. This year it was August 14th, I believe, that we got the list after chasing it down for a week. And we do have, was it 5 new incoming freshmen at Norfolk Aggie? So we've gained, we're either up 1 student or we're even. But that could still change. Someone moves into town in September or October, we own them. And that has happened in past years. So it's a tricky budget. What I typically do is I take the number we know to be reliable at the time we budget, and I add 2 students. Because we have no other place to get that revenue if we don't. So at the end of the year, if we don't get those students, we end up with a surplus. If we do, we're covered. The rest of the budgets are typically consistent from year to year in terms of general operations. So when you factor in the money that we're looking at for fiscal 2020, we have a structural deficit of $1.9 million. That's based on everything we know right now. That could be less, could be considerably less. God forbid it could even be a little more. So we got our work cut out for us. What we have to do now is we have to decide in this format that Scott is talking about to look at how we look at the budget. How do we estimate? Can we break it down into more critical and not critical components? Those are the things we have to do. So where we might see a budget with an expense line of $230,000 or $250,000, we may want to look at that in its various components, and we have to figure out what we can afford to do. It's not a rosy picture, but it's the picture we have. And since these numbers are not firm enough to present as a potential budget, we need to work on them. So I wouldn't want to get too heavily involved in those numbers right now, just to basically identify where we are.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone have any comments, questions about the budget review part?
Yeah, again, Frank, you said basically departments' budgets are pretty firm. Well, then I guess we'll have to ask maybe department heads to really look at their budget. and
Well,
see.
that's what I'm trying,
Yeah.
I don't know if I use the word firm or consistent. but
Consistent, I'm sorry, yeah.
They're,
Predictable.
you know,
Predictable.
they're mostly predictable. We have gone through the exercise from time to time of breaking down a budget into all of its components for expenses, and we'll find that typically, I'll use the Selectmen as an example, there is very little that we spend that's discretionary. We hold hearings, we hire people, we advertise. About the only discretionary spending we have is our membership in the MMA and the MMPA and the MMMA. And when you look at the cost of those and what we get for it, it's money well spent.
Right.
We did, Dan, you may remember 20 years ago,
Be
we
nice now.
decided to not enroll one year.
Right.
And we were screwed because we couldn't get any information. We didn't know what was going on legislatively. We didn't have access to resources.
We weren't their members, right.
For what we spend, which is a few $1,000s, it's a very valuable asset. And that may be the case in other departments. That's why I'm saying we have to look at
Right.
it from a different
The values, yeah.
perspective.
But I would say nothing's off the table this
No.
year. Okay.
And one of the big things, obviously, for the subcommittee to take a look at is that, if this is the number, I mean, we're looking at an override, and if the override, if that is the direction that the town goes, fails at the ballot box, we need to have a backup plan. And we can't make it in the short amount of time that we have, that we worked with last year, so.
One of the things that we have talked about and brought up, and I think one of the requests that I think will come out of this group to the department heads is to give us budgets showing cuts. And the problem is with those cuts, we have to know how, where are you gonna cut? Because as we've said,
The effects of
there's not a lot of places to cut. So there'll be serious effects if there were cuts. And those are, so we have that information to give to the public, so we can say, listen, if it does come to an override, failure to do this will result in, and this is what the result will be. Let's hope we can avoid it.
Yeah, what I'm looking at is controllable expenses. That's it.
Well, it isn't completely bleak. We have made some moves that are going to produce some savings for us. We'll talk about the energy piece tonight, but potentially it's going to save us $70,000 to $80,000. We've made changes in our facilities. We recently got a Green Communities grant that will further move those efforts along. And we've managed to come up with a plan to replace lighting in I think it's the Conway School.
Yeah, those are controllable expenses, that's what I mean. We're looking at controllable expenses, and we're coming with solutions. And it seemed to be worked in that issue with Lisa's efforts, getting that done.
We kind of did the community assessment overview, unless you want to add anything, Frank or anyone else. As far as the timelines are concerned, if I recall from the meeting, she's getting information from us by Labor Day, and then it will be in September/October when they get things together. I think we're looking at the end of the fall.
The end of the, yeah.
End of the fall to actually get results from a survey. Once you get the results of the survey, then that's when writing of some sort of a long-range plan happens. And that's why I have to see this year it two ways. The short term, trying to get a handle on what looks like a really grim situation as far as finances are concerned, and then the long term, one that will allow us to maybe handle some of these grim situations or avoid some of them more readily in the future. But that, once we get the survey, is a survey, and we get a survey, and we can probably predict in some ways what the survey will say, but it will. Then there's a lot of writing that has to be done, a lot of meeting, a lot of discussion, and that will take a little while. But that's why I see that as a long-term solution. But we're living in today,
Right.
not just tomorrow.
I hope to be able to use some of the information. for
Well,
this
I
budget
think
cycle.
actually some of the information would be helpful to use.
Yeah.
But it's not the primary reason why we're doing the survey.
Exactly.
But I think it will help. I think that information will help. For instance, if the survey showed that people don't mind driving in snowdrifts,
Right.
they kind of like the adventure of having no snowplow.
You never know.
That would help.
Yeah.
That would help in a way.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, I haven't heard that there are any liaison reports. However, Brian did say that he was at an event on Saturday night and he wanted to say something. This is not officially a liaison report.
Right, it's an outside outfit. Dan Salvucci and his wife and myself and my wife went to the Whitman Food Pantry fundraiser on Saturday night at the Holy Ghost Spellman Hall. And it was put together by a young lady, just trying to dig up her name, and I spoke with the food pantry executives, and they said that this came out of the blue, that this young lady on her own idea, brought this idea of a fundraiser pasta night to them, and she wanted to run with it, and they let her do it, and the Knights of Columbus helped, the food pantry helped, and the parish helped, and her name is Julia Donovan, nice young lady, and she did an incredible effort, and they raised over $4,000 for the Whitman food pantry in the span of 2 hours. And we just felt that while it's not a town board, so there's really no liaison, I do a lot of work with those folks, and they're unsung heroes. And for one young lady to come forward and to raise that kind of money, it was a spectacular event. Wally the Green Monster was there, and the kids had face painting, and there was all kinds of raffles and auctions and everything else. And it was just, I was moved by that event, and I wanted to share that with everyone, because those are the kind of things that sometimes fly under the radar. But she needed some recognition for that, so I wanted to share that with the group.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is policies and procedures. Frank, cash receipts policy.
Yes, we've been working, Mary Beth and I have been working on this for a number of months, and we'd like to present this as an update to our 1991 single-page cash policy, cash handling policy manual.
Like to describe the changes?
Primarily, it's to ensure that we have appropriate processes for handling money, for taking in payments, for expenses, and that they're properly documented and supported, and that there's a section about collecting unpaid or return payments, that it just makes sense. We're doing most of this, but it's not documented, and what we're trying to do is document our processes.
Good. Does someone like to make a motion that we accept?
I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but reading it, it's pretty basic, and I think it's fundamentally a good policy for our town to have as far as controlling and making sure funds are being handled properly. It's a good job.
You'll be finding this more as we bring in other policies.
Yeah.
That we are doing effectively, but not codifying.
Does anyone have a problem with voting on this tonight, or okay? All those in favor?
Aye. Very good job, Mary Beth.
New business. Board of Health had asked to be here to discuss the health inspector position. Randy has something to say about it, though, I think.
I'm going to make a motion to pass over this this evening. My concern is...
I'll
Is there a
second
Is there a
it.
second? Okay.
I'll second that.
I just didn't want to see one department unjustly brought out over a procedure thing, so.
Okay,
I will thank the Board of Health for providing all the information I asked for.
okay, terrific. I know that Eric had wanted to be here tonight, but he couldn't be because of something that's going on at his work. And I spoke to him about passing over his need to discuss, or his desire to discuss, and he was perfectly fine with that, and he appreciates your accepting the information that they gave.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, is there anything else on the agenda that the Finance Committee would need to be here for this meeting? If not, we're just going to adjourn to our meeting.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we can give you a few minutes to split.
If I may, just follow up on one question that we had at our last meeting. We actually posted for the stakeholders meeting, and we had one item of business was a request for transfer from the reserve fund. And it was regarding reinstating line 206. And if I could just get a quick response from Frank, is that appropriate?
Be my guest.
Thank you.
Last budget cycle, one of the things that we modified was where expenses were being paid. Animal control had been moved to the Board of Health, so it was appropriate to move those expenditure lines to the Board of Health. Now, the simple way to do that is to add space and then cut and paste. And that's what I did. Unfortunately, when I cut and pasted line 206 A, B, and C, which were animal control, I overwrote line 206, which was the assistant animal inspector line. It was an error. More oversight, or I don't know, I guess carelessness than anything else, not paying full attention to what I was doing. And as a result of that, line 206, which has been funded since 2002, disappeared. The work didn't go away. So when I spoke with the Board of Health chair, and he's the one who discovered it sometime in mid-July when they went to make their first payment, I contacted the chairman of the Finance Committee and said, look, I'm going to prepare a reserve fund transfer to provide the $1,800 that should have been presented at town meeting. The board reviewed the request and they approved it. As I understand, there was some question about whether or not that process is permissible. The Finance Committee is governed by its rules and follows the handbook that Al Tosti produces periodically. Al used to be our bond counsel. He's been chairman of the Finance Committee in Arlington for 40 years. So when he says he wrote the book, he means it literally. One of the items in that book says that if a request is made at a town meeting and is rejected, it is inappropriate for the Finance Committee to then vote a transfer for that expense. And we have always followed that rule. This is not the case.
But this was not anything that was rejected.
No, it was, we failed to present it due to an error, and the error was corrected by a vote of the Finance Committee to transfer that sum of money for that purpose, essentially reinstituting line 206. Does that cover it?
Does that cover, any other questions regarding that?
That covers it.
Great. We appreciate the follow-up, and we look forward to the next.
And I did provide that information to Rick
Yep. We did pass it out.
in
There was just-
advance of the meeting.
There was some confusion at our last meeting, but
It was.
now it's clarified. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, public meeting with respect to the application of Mass Auto World, Mike Ranella, for a Class 2 auto dealer's license on the premises located at 835 Temple Street, subject to the receipt of the license fee and final inspection approval of the building commission.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions?
This is
Mr. Ranella here?
Yes.
Why don't you come up to this table and sit by this mic, just in case you want to say anything,
It's like he's panicked.
or if anyone has any questions. You can say, you don't have to.
This is Wesley Dunling, the opponent.
Okay, have a seat. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, I think. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Ranella?
No?
Okay, do you want to say anything to encourage people to come and shop at Mass Auto World? This is your
Nothing
opportunity.
specific, but I think keep an eye on, what we're doing there. I think it's going to be pretty interesting and a good thing.
Okay.
And they do currently operate another dealership in Abington, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
All the proper paperwork and everything is all,
Well, it's
Yes,
subject to
we're
it.
subject to a
it,
couple
yeah.
of things, but yes.
Okay, all those in favor then?
All right, good luck.
Okay.
You're
Good luck and
welcome.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is to announce the resignation of Kim DeMello from the Planning Board effective June 11th, 2018. Now, this is August 2018, so she resigned a while ago, and we're just getting around to acknowledging it, right?
We were notified after our last meeting.
Okay.
The process for replacing a member of the planning board, which is an elected position, is to hold a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the planning board, and to vote to appoint a member who will serve until the next election, at which time that person can run for the office. I'm not aware of anyone seeking to do this right now, but it's a pretty critical role for the town of Whitman, and there's someone out there that has an interest in how we handle and develop this town. It would be most welcome to have them come forward.
Okay, it's more than just inviting somebody to join. It's kind of a critical reason to have another member on the board. You want to speak to this?
Yeah, my daughter-in-law is the vice chair of the planning board, and consistently, there's only 4 members, and because of the way we went from 7 to 6 to 5 eventually, they need all 4 members to be there as the process is down, because it's still, they went from 7 to 6, they need 4 to be there for the majority. They can't hold meetings, meaning that if developers want to come in and present to the planning board, they don't have a quorum and they can't meet. And it's a major problem. So they need to have another person there. And they would, they would like, I assume, somebody that is experienced, we'll say, in that type of industry as far as building, and would take an interest and run for the position after the appointment is all ended, and continue on the plan of the board, the planning board, so they'll have a consistency of 5 members. Then when it goes down to the 5th member, as we tone down, then 3 members would be a majority, just like the Board of Selectmen. But it's not there yet, because we went from 7 to 6, then we'll end up at 5. And it's a 3-year process with Frank or something like that?
To reduce the number.
To reduce the member, right.
But I believe that the subdivision approval requires 4 votes.
Right, 4 votes,
So it isn't, it required 4 when there were 5.
right.
It requires 4
Right,
when
and this has been an
Right now,
ongoing
we have
problem
6.
since these 2 people have not been attending, and there's just 4 members on the board, and I know my daughter-in-law is an engineer, and she's going to Texas in a couple of days and things like that, so she can't, her work interferes with it, so you have members of the board in the same situation. So if anyone is really interested in the development of Whitman, and as far as likes that type of a position, please, were they going to contact you, Frank, or the planning board?
Contact our office, contact the secretary to the planning board, Mary Holland, who works in the clerk's office, submit their interest. They can do it online. There's an online feature to become a member of a volunteer board or committee.
And then I think the process is we have a joint meeting with the planning board,
Yes.
and that'd be 4 of them, 5 of us, and the one who get, if two.
Majority.
Right, the majority of the vote, if more than one person applies. That's all I have to say, thank you.
Well, there are 2 vacancies right now, I believe.
Do you want it, but, right,
Because we're down to 6, but I think we only have 4 members.
right. So if there's 2 vacancies, then the next year, only one can, well, they can both run, but there'd be 1 position open.
Right, so if somebody just wants
To do it for 8
participate
months.
for a year, that'd be great.
Yeah,
I believe Mr. Josh Kimball was the one who was the last resignation prior to this one.
right.
Correct.
That leaves the 2 open seats.
Okay, so we need to encourage people to show an interest, and then have a quick joint meeting with the planning board to appoint someone or 2 people, hopefully,
Right,
for the
yeah,
rest of this
okay.
year. Next item on the agenda is to act on the request of Judith Church to hold a walk-run at the Whitman Town Park on Sunday, September 9th, 2018, in order to raise funds for the Brian McSherry Memorial Scholarship Fund.
So moved.
Is there a second? Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the updated collective bargaining agreement between the town of Whitman and OPEIU Local 6.
The action tonight is to vote to approve the formalized contract and to sign it, I believe. I have it right here for those.
Need a motion?
They need a motion.
Motion.
Is there a second? Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Act on the request of the Whitman Recreation Commission to hold the first annual Great Pumpkin Classic Car Show at the Whitman Middle School on Sunday, October 7th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., with a rain date of October 14th, 2018. Proceeds to benefit Whitman Enhancing Dollars for Scholars and Whitman recreational programs. For your motion.
So moved.
Second.
Lisa and our recreation director were very involved in this. Would one of you like to
Guys want to do a pitch?
talk a little bit about it?
So you got our car all
Over here.
spiffed
All
up, fetching.
It was polished yesterday.
I saw a 1964 red Impala convertible as I was driving to the meeting tonight.
Wow.
Wasn't ours.
What?
Not if
I
it
want
was
to see,
shiny,
I
but-
want to see that car again.
8-cylinder 386, I believe.
1964.
Is this a direct competition
Drove
with
that in
the
high school.
Spooktacular?
No, this is basically to fill the
The void.
vacuum left behind Spooktacular, because they will not be,
Oh, they're not coming?
They're not coming to Shannon.
Spectacular will not be coming to Whitman any longer. They pulled out, so Ollie and I talked about filling the void. It's an event that a lot of people from Whitman look forward to every year. The families loved it, bringing the kids with their costumes. They have a costume party contest. The folks that brought cars brought bowls of candy so the kids could do a little trick-or-treating. It was just a fun time for Whitman. It brought business to Whitman businesses, it brought people to Whitman, and we hated to see that void happen, so.
yeah,
So who came up with the name Great Pumpkin Classic Car Show? Yes, that's pretty
That
cool.
was Lisa.
I've been reaching out to my network.
I noticed she had a Charlie Brown book in her bag.
One of the members of, from one of the car shows suggested this name. And from what I hear, we can expect, if the weather's good, we can expect quite a large crowd.
Great, perfect. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Great work, you guys.
Awesome.
And the dollars for scholars, too.
Yeah,
that's
it's giving
gonna
up
be
dollars to scholars.
So the schools are part of this as well.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Good luck.
thank you.
I know what I'll be doing that Sunday.
We need to set the September meeting schedule. 11th and 25th make sense to people?
That worked for me.
The 4th doesn't work,
I won't be around on the 11th.
but you'll be able to send a report in
I can send you
from
whatever you need.
from the
the,
committee that's will
From the Sam Adams booth where I'll be watching the Red Sox game.
Well, at least it's important.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
I will give you an update.
Okay. You could give us updates on the game.
I will,
As a matter of fact.
absolutely.
It's-
Skype.
Okay, old business. LED streetlight conversion project update.
Lisa, you're all right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
We need to, sorry, Lisa, but you need to go over
It's easier
there.
if I sit down.
And you might as well stay there because you have the next item on the agenda too.
Yep, and I'll take it back.
Move the mic a little closer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Frank and I have the privilege of meeting with George Woodbury of LightSmart, who is our consultant for the LED light conversion, streetlight conversion. He went over some different options that are out there for the LED streetlights. There's many different ones that pertain to the type of technology we can get. You can get plain LEDs, you can have LEDs that we can control the brightness of the light, the intensity, how long it's bright, how long we can dim it. He went over those type of controls, went through some different companies, what the pros and cons were of each particular company. He's very, very knowledgeable. He is he's a genius with this technology. He can look at a street light, look at the surroundings and say, that particular light is a 500-watt light, but you really only need 250 watts for this particular area. We can do that with this particular LED. So he can look at each individual area and determine the best wattage and the best design for the street light that will meet the needs of that area. He did include some figures, preliminary figures, based on the preliminary research that he's done of our whole town streetlights, which shows the costs, and then it breaks it down between the funding, consulting fees, the labor, and the total cost. One system that's been highly recommended, as I was calling around to different towns that have gone through this project, for references for the companies that have been on this job, a lot of them recommended going with the controls, full controls for the streetlights. And this allows you basically to control, again, the lighting, the time, the intensity, the appearance of the light. In the future, it allows the town to do other things as well with the lights, as far as any type of surveillance or with policing and things like that. So it gives a lot of opportunities for us to do in the future. With the grant money that we received through the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, the National Grid's incentives, and the Green Communities, this system is very affordable to the town of Whitman, which we would only incur a cost of about $14,500 for this whole system. And like I said, it's highly recommended. National Grid and our Green Communities project coordinator, Seth Pickering, also highly recommend that type of system. There is a page that provides the costs, the savings, basically how much we stand to save in our kilowatt hours, how much we stand to save in our delivery costs, supplies, and basically overall savings to the town once this project is complete. And the figure of about $72,658 annual savings to the town once this project's complete is what we stand to gain. I also included some pictures. A lot of it's very technologically wording, so I did include some information on the intelligent controls. George Woodbury put together a very detailed report for a town in Rhode Island, so I kind of took an excerpt from that report that he provided to me that would talk about a little bit more about the intelligent controls. He is also available by cell phone, standing by. If you have any questions, I can dial him up and you can ask him the questions. But what we would be looking for this evening is your guidance and feedback of which direction you'd like to see Whitman go in, as far as what type of system you would prefer to see. That way he can proceed with seeking out the best, procuring the streetlights for that particular system and move forward with that. Frank, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, one of the major reasons to make the additional investment in the controls is that we would have the ability to set schedules for when the lights come on, when they go off, and to adjust intensity as needed. It gives us the ability to address the needs of neighborhoods as well as providing the general light controls that exist now where they're either on or off. And sometimes in some communities, one in particular, by reducing the wattage or the lumens of the lights, they saved an additional $6,000 a month just by adjusting them. So you can literally look at each street and say, okay, we don't need as much light there. Dim it, set the schedule, and you're done.
Are those capabilities to do that remote, or you have to physically go to the...
Well, right now, if we get a system without controls, you'll have to physically climb a pole to make any adjustments to any light.
So this
With the
is-
control system, we can do it remotely. And there are a couple of different approaches. One is wired, one is wireless. It's really amazing what they're doing with LED electronics right now.
The other question I had was, the current locations that we have where the lights are now, are we stuck with those same locations? or can we
Not
really
necessarily.
do whatever we want?
They're doing an audit. He's pretty close to complete on it.
It should be done by about the second week
They're
of September.
physically identifying every light with GPS information. We'll have a map layer to look at where those lights are placed. He's already made some suggestions about changes that should be made, both to the types of lights and where the lights are. So this is a whole new approach to things.
The other question that just popped into my head was, there are, I know it's not many, but there are some people that purchased or wanted to purchase lights in front of their house because they were in between, I guess, and they wanted additional lighting.
If it's already there, they still have that option.
Yep.
But if they go through National Grid, it's going to be very expensive, because once the lights are transferred to us, they're not going to go up there and put up a fixture. We don't pay for the fixture when they mount them. We just pay for the usage. And if we're going to do that, then we're going to be looking, if it's not something that's designed and needed, if it's a convenience thing. They're at the end of a cul-de-sac and they have a basketball court and they want to light it up. There's some cost associated with that.
But
It
there
would
is going to be an
necessary for
option
them
that
to
they
pay.
could do it if they wanted to.
Yes.
I have a question. Frank, if that's the case, could we, like if they want it and it's cheaper to the homeowner if we have it, could we, if they ask for it, could we, like we bill them for that to reimburse the town?
Yes, some
Sec-
towns are doing that right
Yeah.
now.
Second of all, we can, when they do the survey, they can look at areas of, I don't know how you want to put it, possible crime, put lights there.
Well, that's the other point to the controls. There was a
Right.
situation where the police needed to take some action in an area where they didn't necessarily want a lot of exposure. They were able to shut off those lights for
Right.
them for that period of time.
Good.
And Mr. Woodbury, through some, his initial investigations, has already identified at least one light that we know of that the town is paying for, but it is for private purposes.
And it's one of the $70 a month lights.
Wow. Now, the maintenance, who takes care of the maintenance?
We do.
So in other words,
We own it.
if the light bulb is broken, we have to repair it. And who will do that?
Well, we'll enter into a maintenance agreement
Oh, I
with
see. Okay.
someone
Okay.
to maintain that. I know some towns actually use, if they have lift equipment and employees who are licensed, and you need a licensed electrician to work with these, they actually do that in-house.
But as you can see.
There wouldn't be enough to just cost justify
Right.
doing that.
But the maintenance costs of these new lights is very minimal compared to what we pay now. Mr. Woodbury, he is estimating about maybe $11,000 a year for maintenance, if that, for the first few years, because we have warranties and things. But, I mean, right now, we're paying National Grid close to $69,000 right now a year for maintenance costs. And also, too, with, let's see, lost my train of thought. Oh, it was just about the light that he found that we're paying for
Right, so now
privately.
these are some of the issues where
Benefited.
we can start saving money, looking at budget process and ways of doing things. Beautiful, very good.
You're looking for some specific recommendations from us, right? Is it right now?
What we're looking for is the board to authorize us to enter into an agreement to
Yeah.
purchase the lights that include the control system.
The intelligent control system.
Yes.
And that's at that's a $14,500 price, if I'm correct, but it's covered by the grant,
Yes.
covered by the Green Communities grant. And the alternative is to have a dimmable system. So it's like active control versus passive.
Right. Actually, the 14,500 would not be covered. That's what we would incur after the grant cover everything else. So the cost to the town would be
Be an
14,500.
increased cost to us.
Oh.
It
So
would
I
be a
missed- so-
cost we had not initially
So I
expected to incur.
I didn't read this correctly then. The last line of the paragraph is the cost of this option would be completely funded by the Green Communities Grant. That's the passive option? That's
That
the
would
dimmable.
be, that is for the other option is the dimmable system
And
with the
that's
long
one.
life photo.
That's the one that's covered by the grant.
Yes.
If we want to have an intelligent system, we have to pay for
That would
brains.
be, yes, the $14,500
Okay,
for
okay.
that system.
Now, is that a licensing agreement or a software agreement with them entering into long-term?
Would just be a software that,
One-time fee,
just a
we're not
one-time software,
paying
yes.
any license?
No, we're not
No.
paying an annual fee.
Yeah.
The other thing to bear in mind, if we go into the dimmable ones, they're not hand-controlled. You have to climb up and set the,
Oh, no, I like the idea of
you
having,
have to change the
I like
settings
the
of the
idea of
light
remote
bulb.
controls.
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to be aware that we're
Right.
paying.
Have we appointed a pole climber yet?
Tree climber.
That's another job for someone. Yeah. You know, there are guys that look at fences, there are people that climb
We need a
poles.
pole climber.
I like it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in light of the fact that we got unexpected monies for Hurricane Sandy, which would almost be the same amount of money that you're talking about,
Broke even
Well, they were
tonight.
expected, they were just a long time.
I think it would behoove us maybe to go in the direction of the intelligent system.
Okay, would you like to make that in the form of a motion of
Motion
support?
that we
To authorize them to,
authorize to spend the 14, whatever, for the intelligent system to remotely adjust each light.
I'll second that. We don't want Frank climbing poles.
okay?
I just want to be clear on something
Let's see it once.
before you vote.
Yeah.
It's not costing us 14,000. The net impact
Oh,
is a
yeah.
cost of
Okay.
14,000.
The net cost is 14,000, right?
Yes.
These are monies we've already appropriated.
They're money that's already available to us through money we appropriated and a grant.
Right.
So my expectation is, with the exception of $14,000, that's what it's going to cost to pay off the $280,000 we borrowed.
That even
It's a good
makes it sound better.
Okay, any further discussion? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Lisa,
Thank
you're
you,
up
Lisa.
next.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere.
We asked you to do a little research on the way selected people choose their liaisons and to what extent other towns have liaisons, and also to look into the possibility of establishing a handbook for the Board of Selectmen on the way it operates itself.
It's a nice
Yes.
draft.
So I did perform some research, what I did with the assistance of Lori O'Brien. We reached out to a total of 24 different towns, made phone calls to the Board of Selectmen's office in each town and asked them basically the two questions. Did they have a handbook that was focused towards Board of Selectmen? And the second question was whether their Board of Selectmen were liaisons to departments. If they were, how were those liaisons designated? And the answers that we got, basically, there isn't one practice that each Board of Selectmen follows in each town. There were a lot of different variations. Some towns, the Board of Selectmen were liaisons only to other boards or committees. Some towns, they were only liaisons as needed. If a situation arose and they needed a Board of Selectmen involvement in that particular situation with the board, they would be a liaison as needed. There were a few towns that had Boards of Selectmen to departments, but it was very few. They weren't designated to just particular town departments. And as far as designation for the assignments, very few towns, again, in some towns, the chair did assign the liaisons. In some towns, the Board of Selectmen, they talked collaboratively on assignments. They would volunteer which department or which board they would like to be liaison to based on interests and other factors. And basically, again, didn't show any particular uniform factor or way that each town did it.
Did you happen to notice, sorry to interrupt, did you happen to notice on some of the ones that, specifically the ones that did have a liaison to a department head, were those more likely to be communities that had town administrator form as opposed to a town manager?
I don't, no, but it didn't seem to sway one way or the other.
Yeah.
If you see the different towns that were contacted, basically, as far as the handbooks were concerned, there were a few towns that had a handbook that was focused strictly to selectmen. A lot of the towns had handbooks that were focused towards boards and committees, operational boards and committees that included selectmen. Out of those 24 towns, only 2 towns, they have their own handbook, selectmen handbook, and they did address liaisons. Only 2 towns out of 24. Those were Hamilton and Acton. And I do have copies of...
That's broad range.
Well, you could throw Duxbury in there
Yeah.
too, 'cause they do have one that,
I'm sorry, yeah, Duxbury actually lists their liaisons.
but again, I think they're just to boards and committees, they're not to department.
Right, boy, yes.
'Cause I don't have one.
What I do is I did highlight the towns that the chair assigns the liaisons. Those are highlighted in there. And what I did was, did a lot of research on the different handbooks. And there were many towns that use the MMA, Massachusetts Municipal Association Handbook for Selectmen. A lot of the towns use that resource. It is available in electronic form, and we do have a copy of it in our electronic
speak of
folders.
liaison.
It does not speak of liaisons. It does not touch on that subject. And also, our town clerk formulated an email, and she did send it out to various clerks. And those answers, again, are provided in the research sheet on numbers 25 through 33 of what their answers were. There were a couple that the information that she received was a little different from the information that I received. And then, basically, their response is a little bit vague. They didn't really go into detail of what their selectmen, how they addressed liaisons. So the research supports that liaisons are in each town, but each town fashions and structures how their liaisons are going to be able to meet the needs of departments, boards and committees, and each Board of Selectmen basically is on its own of how they want to approach liaisons.
You gave us a draft table of contents of what a selectman's handbook would look like.
Yes.
How much do you think it would take to fill out the table of contents into something that looks like a handbook?
Well, I just need a little direction from the Board of Selectmen. Do you want me to fashion a handbook that is specifically for Board of Selectmen? Do you want me to fashion a handbook that is an operational guide that would include boards and committees? Because I have examples for both, and based on the direction you'd like me to take, I can fashion this handbook as you designate, and that would determine what's included. I provided the board the table of contents so that you could see what type of topics are included. I can delete topics, I can add topics, and again, this can be directed towards Board of Selectmen only for any new selectmen who are elected, or this can be general boards and committees fashioned. So based on what direction you give me, then I can hit the ground running on completing the handbook.
Well, can we or can we not have a handbook for other boards that are elected? Like,
We do. I mean, they're given one when they're elected by the town clerk, which gives them their
but I mean,
charge on how they act, how they
Can we put it
conduct.
together, or those have to be,
I don't see why we would. I
Right,
think we
they
should
need to.
absolutely have one for us.
right,
but
and we'll say like the DPW commission should do their own, design their own handbook.
Absolutely. Okay.
A good question. Do you find that the MMA handbook is too vague, or just in general, not specific to liaisons, but, I mean, they've done a lot of legwork.
It's a very good resource. I did read through a lot of it when I was searching for information on liaisons, and it's a very good resource that our town as well could use. And then we could just branch out to a boards and committees type of handbook that would be
And
useful to all.
Use that as a base and get town-specific, if we have anything in particular we want to
Exactly.
add to that. I mean, I have that book, and it's,
Right.
you know, it's well done.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't, you know, if we wanted to add some Whitman-specific things in addition to that, I think we could save some time.
Well, I think that, you know, the nice part of any of these handbooks is they're not, you know, etched in stone and that's
Right.
it. And, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's a living document that as
Right.
we progress or come up with issues that we want to deal with,
Things in the town change.
we
Right,
adjust and change. and,
Every town is different, and has its own structure and
Right.
some issues or situations that
Yeah.
they want to address that's town-specific.
Perfect example is the planning board, how, you know, for the last 3 years have changed. You know, so the rules are going to have to change somewhat for them, so.
This is a pretty tall order and
I'd
that this,
I'd like to see one specific to the Board of Selectmen in Whitman, so I don't have to go to that thick book from the MMA.
They make it a pocket
I
size.
would too, but I would also like to maybe just suggest that we prioritize where we want to see this in the scheme of other things that we're looking for that we've dumped on
Lisa?
Lisa and Frank to do as far as policies and procedures.
That's why my question, which hasn't been answered yet, was
Where do you want to rank this?
how much
board.
work is it to do this?
Looks like a lot of
To
work.
make that table of contents into something that's readable?
Well, it would take a little while, because again,
Okay,
there are some
more
things that are
specific than a little while.
town-specific
Give it
that
6
we'd
months.
need
Months,
guidance
years.
and direction on to touch. Some of these are pretty standard across the board. But then again, we'd have whatever direction that you provide. As far as some of the different topics under the table of contents, we would need Board of
Well,
Selectmen. We would need your
a
direction.
lot of the stuff you could describe almost immediately because we have a practice. We have a past practice.
Mm-hmm. And things like that, I can get in
That's
here
why I kind of
quickly.
shy away from going to the the
Because
MMA
it's too
thing.
vague in general.
Yeah, we have a way that we've been doing things, whether it's
Right.
the right way of doing them or not.
Yeah,
We have a
it's
way that
the
we've been
way
doing
we've
things.
done
I'd
it,
like to
right.
see it at least.
I mean, a simple thing like the board meeting scheduling, right? You can, right, and then you can go to that page and you're gonna write, as needed?
Well, that's the interesting thing about that.
Well, that's why I
We
can,
have-
I can delete some.
Typically, towns have a fixed schedule. It's the
We-
first and third Tuesday or the second and fourth
And we don't.
Tuesday.
We don't.
And we don't because we base it on
What?
what needs to be addressed.
Actually, what do we base it on? We base it on who can be, who's available.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, for an example, there
Or
are some
as needed.
towns that
I'm good.
basically state that the board will reorganize after town meeting.
Right.
After town elections. I do have a working draft of this where I fashioned it towards what our board normally does. And if we have a board member that's absent, then our board can choose or vote to table that to the next meeting until we have a full board
So you've
to
actually-
reorganize.
You've actually
So
done a little work on it.
I have been doing some work on it to fashion this to fit the Whitman Board of Selectmen practices.
Using the MMA as a guide.
Using that as a guide, and some of the other towns, Georgetown has a very good handbook that's really close to Whitman, so I've been
Called
using the
Cut and
Georgetown
Paste.
handbook a lot.
Don't, that didn't work, so be careful.
Just have to be careful.
Right.
Don't let Frank cut and paste, it's just you.
Okay, I am, I'd be as concerned as Scott is to overburden you with stuff that's to overburden you with stuff.
Well, it's just a matter, I want to deliver what you're looking for and what you expect, and that takes time.
Maybe by Christmas. No, I mean, for how many years? For as long as the selectmen have been here, we've been operating without a handbook. So I'm sure it's not something that has to be done immediately.
Well, just like I said, I'd like to see it prioritized with some of
Put it
the
in the
other
queue.
things that we've
Well,
got
what-
working and want to get done. And I have a feeling you've got a budget season coming up that's going to take a little bit of your attention too, so. But I do think this is a good idea and I'd like to see it.
I agree.
Yeah, so we'll let Lisa be the judge of when she can get it done. I mean, it's
Trust
just-
her.
Yeah.
I can get that done in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, without taking away from things that are more important than our reading how we do things, or how we've been doing things. Okay. But the other assignment was to, was to deal with how liaison assignments are dealt with. It looks like we have choices here. That there's been a tradition in Whitman of doing it a certain way that some other towns use. If you look at the Whitman Hanson School Committee, they have a way of doing it.
South Shore Vortec?
South Shore Vortec has a way of doing it. It's up to us to decide what we want to do.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, one thing I do remember over the years is we had, at that time of the year, I think it was you who sent out, rate your preferences in a numerical fashion.
I did that?
Yeah, on what liaisons you'd like with, the higher number and the lower number. And-
Wow, I don't even remember doing it.
Yeah, in the
That's a good
past.
idea.
Yeah, and it might,
That was a good idea.
yeah, what's, no, I just think
All
that
right.
maybe we could use that in the time leading up to that, after the election, that maybe.
Thank you
that
for
would-
reminding me.
Yeah. It's just, it'll give somebody a chance to make an informal request as
Yeah.
to the areas that
Good.
they're interested in, and they can rate them, and then you can.
I like that.
Tally it up.
I must have liked it at one time, and
You did.
I don't know where it went. Okay. Okay, good.
Am I
Anything
excused?
else?
Better just stay there.
All right, so now we're just floating along.
I think there's nothing here that required a motion.
Okay, so just to be clear, we still have the situation where chair people, whoever is the chair makes the liaison assignments. Next time I make a liaison assignment, I'll make sure I remember what I did the last time.
Maybe a
Because
suggestion.
that just makes sense, and
Yeah.
I should. Is that okay with the rest of the board?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I think that at least that gives you some incentive as to knowing who is interested.
It does. We might want to have a discussion at some point, without taking attention away from really important things, We want to have a discussion at some point about how many liaisons we really need to have, and who we need to be
Right.
attached to.
Liaison.
Yeah, we have a lot. We have a
Well,
lot, and some of them, yes,
The process started 30, 40 years ago, and there was a time when we had no administrative operations. It was just the selectmen running the town and a part-time secretary. So every department had liaisons, because it would have been chaos if they didn't know who to reach out to. And I suspect what we have today is a carryover in part from those days.
okay.
Scott mentioned town managers. I'm not aware of any town that has a town manager that has selectmen liaisons. That would create a real
Yeah, it
rift
would
between the
be-
manager and the
That's why I
department.
asked, it would be a big problem. Typically, you'll see a liaison from finance who will come to you at budget season,
Yeah,
but it's a total different type of liaison, and that's about it.
yeah, but I also think, like, in a small community like this, I mean, like, we'll say, when I used to be liaison to the library, I don't even know if no, I'm not. I used to drop in to the library and talk to Andrea and say, how things going, everything okay? And she was, oh my God, yeah, or if she had a problem, I would bring it back to Frank or something like that, or something could, she would go to the trustees, but still, to have a member from the Board of Selectmen or, the liaison to drop in and just show, everything okay, concerns, anything I can help with. It's kind of makes that department head feel good.
Yeah, but that would be one of the examples where I would think we might not even need a liaison, though, if they have their own board of trustees.
Right, true, right,
Or there would be a liaison.
liaison to the Board of
What?
Trustees.
right, to
as
the Board
opposed
of Trustees,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
to the library itself.
okay.
Okay.
Last item on the agenda under old business is to act on the Whitman Hanson Regional School District amended agreement. We've been holding on to this for a while.
There were a number of questions.
The last time we talked about it, Frank said you were gonna
Do some
talk to some,
research on that.
talk to some
Yes.
school people and do some research on it,
And
because some
the-
of us had questions about parts of it.
Right. And
Hanson has already voted it.
Hanson has voted it. So the only question I think that still rises is on page 9.
That's in your mind.
Well, yeah, based on the discussions I've had with
Okay.
other members of the board. On page 9, section B, there is a procedure. And we talked a bit in the past about whether or not the town should have an option to leave the region. And there's so much involved in that, I tend to think what's in here is okay. But then there's another provision. Any proposal for amendment, except a proposal for amendment providing for the withdrawal of a member town, may be initiated by a vote of the committee or by a petition signed by 10% of the registered voters. So the question raised there, and I did speak with Michelle Lindbergh today on that, is if the Board of Selectmen, in its role as the executive board for the town, had a concern or issue with the agreement that they wanted to address in a potential amendment, prior to signing this agreement, the board would prepare a proposal for an amendment, discuss it with the schools, and if the board wished to move forward, would place it on a town meeting warrant.
Yeah, we need 1,600 people.
Now we need 990 registered voters to sign a petition before we can raise that question. So my comment to Michelle, for the benefit of the school committee, is I understand that the school committee wants to maintain its responsibilities and its control. But what we're doing in this agreement is we're taking away the authority of the board to act as an executive board for the town on an issue that may involve presenting a amendment to the agreement. So the question is whether that's important enough to hash out, or if we accept the agreement as it stands. If we accept the agreement as it stands, and we have a process like that, logically, we would have to go to the school committee and ask them to propose
To make the amendment,
the amendment.
hat in hand.
Frank, school committee, when we went into a region, we have a school committee that are elected officials. They have the power of the
Yep.
region. So wouldn't it be in their hands and not ours?
To make an amendment to their agreement.
But you have to remember, when we created that region, we gave them autonomy. They were a separate, independent political subdivision of the state.
I mean,
They're not accountable to us.
that's right.
Despite
So
what you
we
think.
don't want the school committee making decisions that the selectmen are held responsible for. So why are we making decisions that the
We're not.
elected school committee members are?
We're not. The question that rises here is whether the Board of Selectmen for the town of Whitman or the town of Hanson or any town that's in a region should be permitted to present a proposal to amend the agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a million things that could come up in here that we may, as a board, not agree with. You know, and it could be in transportation, it could be in operating, or any of the things that are associated with it. Us as a board collectively may want to.
Okay, that being said, the school committee as a board may not like some of the things that we do in procedures in the town.
But they're voters, they can make a proposal.
We're
You know,
vote,
10 voters in this community can present a petition to put an article on the warrant. We need 990.
We don't get that sometimes in an election, on a municipal election. That could be hard.
I believe that the structure of this proposal, and I have asked Michelle to talk to Morris about it,
okay,
is to eliminate,
the percentage?
is to eliminate the town's ability to get into the agreement without a so-called supermajority of participants asking that it be done. And I have no horse in this race, really. I find it hard to imagine that we would be so stonewalled in a request to make a change at the school level that the school committee would say, go away, get 990 signatures. But I also find it hard to believe that a Board of Selectmen would frivolously make proposals and amendments. Why take that authority, which we now have? And that's, all I'm saying is, you have the ability to do that now. This takes it away. If you're comfortable with that, vote for it.
And that's been my view all along with this, is that we've gone from powers of this board that have worked, and now we're, for no apparent reason, giving them away.
Giving everything away, basically.
And do we need to?
And Frank zeroing in on page 9 is one way to get into saying, you know what,
You just don't know what's coming down the pipe.
yeah.
Well, what you said, you don't expect a school committee to tell us to go and get 990 as it's constituted now.
Well,
But what happens in 5 years? It could be vastly different,
Well,
and
basically,
then it's too late.
Basically, what this procedure does is whoever wrote this knows that 10% of the registered
The
voters.
superintendent wrote it, not
Yeah.
ours, but another one.
Yeah, they know that you're not going to get 10% of registered voters to propose an amendment
Right.
to this thing.
Yep.
So basically, it's saying that the only way an amendment can be proposed is through a school committee member.
This is coming out of a more hostile district
Well,
somewhere.
yeah,
So-
because in theory, if you look at the quorum for Whitman and the quorum for Hanson, at an annual town meeting, 100 voters can change that agreement.
Well, would you agree instead of 10%, you put it 150 voters?
No, I would say the Board of Selectmen should retain its right. If their concern is that some agitated citizen is going to make their life miserable by proposing an amendment, then treat it the way you treat, if somebody wants to call for an election without the consent of the board, they have to go out and get signatures.
Right.
So if a citizen wants to petition to change the school committee agreement, then there should be a higher threshold than just having a disgruntled voter saying, I want to change this. But the townspeople have elected the boards in Hanson and Whitman to represent them as the executive board of the community.
All right,
And if the board feels that there's something that needs to be looked at or changed, they shouldn't have to go through hoops to do it. They should be able to present, it may not pass in both towns, but they should have the ability to present it.
So first you say you don't want to have a citizen have to go out and get 10% of the registered voters to make a change. Or you don't, you want them to have to get, you don't want
I'm
them
saying,
frivolous.
I'm not saying that, I'm saying if that's the concern, then that's a way to address it. Because something as significant as making a change to a regional agreement that binds the two towns has to be thought out.
Right.
And has to be discussed. The place to do that is here, not out on the street. It's here, it's at a town meeting. We can't get it to a town meeting unless we get 900 votes.
So here's a scenario.
I don't know that there is any process for the,
Should we decide that we're not going to vote this because of that provision, but Hanson already has voted that, what's the next step?
a amended agreement, a further amended agreement would have to be developed and signed by both towns.
At least this one procedure. This is the only thing you have objection to?
I don't object to the agreement, I'm pointing out the obvious issue.
Right. So, I mean, to correct this obvious issues that you see it, see, I think that we voted to have members for the regional agreement, the region. And we need to trust in those people that we voted in to do the right thing. If something needs to be changed,
Okay, I hate to draw this analogy, but I'm going to do it
Okay.
to address your argument. If we hit the wall and we found that in order to continue functioning the way we do, or as a town,
Right.
there are some needed changes that need to be made at the regional level, either in the budget process or the capital appropriation
Okay.
process, or anything along that line. Right now, if we feel that way, we can present that to the region. And if they say, no, we're not interested in changing, we can still present it at a town meeting. And both towns would be required to act on it.
If we don't like the procedures that they're doing, our procedure is not to vote their budget at town meeting. Right?
You're gonna shut down the schools?
Well, hey,
See, after the discussion that we had earlier,
See, I can argue both sides of this,
Yeah,
if you'd like
yeah.
me to take the other side.
the discussion
I'd
that
be
we had
happy to.
earlier in this meeting about how we need to look at every single thing from every angle, because we're in a pinch, a crisis, that why would we want to take away our rights and make it harder to do that? And under your premise of we elected school committee people to do their job, not under that agreement, but a previous agreement that did not have that. So I think that
okay.
the game has changed. And I agree with Frank, that I think that this might be something that needs to be relooked at.
So do you have wording that you want to replace that article?
No.
B?
If the board is uncomfortable with what's there, then we have to make a decision to present an alternative,
Right, so
which is to remove the 900, the 10%.
the 10%.
It's redlining it.
To remove the 10% and replace it with what? A petition signed by
I don't-
150
I think it's-
voters
I think it's
and/or-
insulting to think that the Board of Selectmen in a town doesn't have the responsibility and authority to act for the town, that you then have to go out and seek petitions. You have to get the voters to come at a town meeting to vote the decision. You have to hold meetings and discussions in open forum to debate this issue and reach a decision. Do you want to do all that, then say, okay, now, Frank, Brian, Dan, Randy, Scott, let's all go out with our signature pads and get 990 people to sign a petition?
Okay, I'm
So
gonna,
just
I'm
strike
gonna
the
play the
10%
devil's
and put
advocate
in-
here.
Except by the Board of
Right.
Selectmen. A majority
Okay,
vote of the Board.
Maybe initiated by a vote of the committee or upon request of,
By a two-thirds vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay,
I don't think we need to really rehash this. If we just bring this to a vote and we vote it down, they have to rewrite it.
well, they won't know what to rewrite.
Well,
Well,
they
we
need to
can
know
then
what the problem
communicate
is.
with them. We don't need to rewrite it
Why
right
don't we
here.
vote it in the affirmative as amended?
Well,
And
I don't
if
know
they
if we
don't
can do
want to
that.
accept it,
I don't know if you can do that.
Frank, I have a question for you. If there,
I think the
tell-
process would be to say,
We tell
we're
them
going to
we
table
can't- we
this.
can't approve
We're
it.
not prepared to
It's
vote
gone.
on it.
Due to
Here's
this
the
issue.
concern.
Due to the concern about B on page 9.
okay,
So moved. Well, my thing is, we keep tabling
Second.
this, and we keep getting,
We want to give them
we need to
either
give them
positive
a
or
reason
negative.
why and an
we keep getting the
alternative.
same thing back.
Well, I'm sure they're watching, they already know.
Frank, I have a question for you. If if we don't like something that the planning board is about to approve on a development, and they're an elected board, or the DPW commissioners are gonna plan to do something, and they're elected officials, but we don't like it, we have no right to tell them, you can't do
Sure
it.
you do. You can refuse to sign the warrant. Every check written in this town must be signed by the, must
So
be
we stop
approved
the
by the
project.
accountant.
We stop the project.
And approved by
So you either
the
stop the
majority
project
of
or
the
you
Board of
stop the school
Selectmen.
process.
No, that's
Wait a
not a
minute, but
comparison,
you
Dan.
just said, vote down their budget at town
You know,
meeting. That's
right.
doing the same thing.
That's, well, that's what he's saying to do.
No,
No,
I don't
I'm
think
not.
he isn't saying.
I don't think we should be, okay, whatever. I think,
I don't think we're getting anywhere. with
I don't think the Board of
it.
Selectmen
Listen to what Randy
is
said.
such all-powerful to step on other elected officials'
Well,
toes.
they're stepping on ours, if you want to look at it that way.
I agree.
Dan, they're changing your
They've changed it to
ability.
their
Right.
favor. If we
Right.
want to look at stepping on
Under the old
toes.
agreement, that wasn't there.
Right.
And we were fine with that agreement.
Exactly, and it functioned fine. By no means are we pulling out of the school district,
Right.
but why does a board give up authority for no reason? Because
And
you
what
don't-
authority do you want?
I don't want any more authority than I had.
But
But
what
I
do you-
don't-
what
but
did
I
you
don't- but I
have-
don't know what's
what did you
coming.
have that you
We
want?
had the ability to pull out if we wanted to. If the town so said so. You're going to lose that.
If you pull out of the region, there is no
No,
region.
I'm not saying I want to pull, right, exactly, but you can't do that anymore.
You gotta have the option.
Right.
Okay.
And I am not proposing that, I don't think that works, but
Right.
why do you give something away?
Be careful, somebody's going to say that you're saying we should,
But somebody may say that, that's why I'm being
Somebody's
very
gonna
clear.
say.
Quote
Saw it
me.
on Twitter.
that,
But this is an addition, you had an agreement. that
We know you're
worked.
against
Why
it.
are we changing it?
pulling out
I
of
agree.
region.
I agree. We shouldn't be giving any of our rights away that have worked for so many years prior to this.
Again, I was asked to look at these things and
So what did I motion, that we would table this until Frank talked
I
to
think
Lisa?
tabling it is going nowhere, we keep getting the same thing back. I would make a motion to deny this and have it rewritten.
Well, a point of order, there's already a motion and a second. You'd have to withdraw his motion already, because I seconded it.
I refuse to withdraw my motion until we vote on it.
Where are we?
well, excuse me.
right now, there's a motion, table this and go back to
So
the
you're not
region and
withdrawing.
say,
And say-
this
and say we don't-
language is not acceptable, we want the,
Which has the same effect of what
Yeah,
Randy wants.
In
I would
essence,
agree
right.
to that vote if in fact we come up with language that we would accept.
we just did, get
Yeah.
rid of, allow the
Just
board
redline
the
it.
right it has right now to propose changes if the board, in the interest of the town, sees it's
Now,
necessary.
this thing on page 9 is the only thing we're objecting to.
Is there anything
Because that
else?
does not, that does not,
There were other questions that were raised. I went through each of them
Yep.
with the schools. There's the issue of borrowing, but that's all covered by statute.
Yeah, right.
This isn't statutory.
Right.
This
That's
is an
just-
agreement.
That's just
okay,
what they
this,
want.
this, just to be clear, this B procedure on page 9, it excludes the proposal for amendment providing for the withdrawal of a member. It's not
Correct.
dealing with that at all.
Right.
It's not dealing with it.
No, it's not. It's dealing with
It's any other amendment.
any other amendment.
Any other amendment. Okay.
Well, then I would also, because I don't know if is this a recent amendment?
This is the one we've
a
had
month ago.
since June.
Then yes, I would also say that the withdrawal procedure is not the same language that was in the previous regional
So,
agreement.
Page 10,
Page 10.
10B, going to 10 and 11, A and B. All definitions.
I don't
Yeah, that was
understand.
that was different also, I think. Correct?
Right. Well, the withdrawal of it would dissolve the district, because there is no district. You can't have one town for a district.
But you
Yes, you
can't.
can. They're all districts. It's just not a regional district.
Right.
I believe there was language changed in this,
Oh, there was.
And it's been-
that it was a majority
Page 11.
of this.
Do you have the last agreement there, Frank?
No, I don't.
You know what? There's a motion on the floor to table this.
We'll table it.
And I think we need to be a little bit clearer on. exactly
I'll
what we're
prepare a
objecting to.
comparative analysis and
Right.
send it out to everybody.
Yeah, for the O1 to this one.
Yep.
And we'll just have to, we'll table it and let them know that we are,
I mean,
we're not convinced that all of these,
and we don't need to
provisions
rush
are-
either.
they're in our-
It more than likely isn't getting signed until May, so.
Right.
Well, it can't be signed until both towns have a town meeting, and we have none scheduled.
right. So the motion is, do you need the reason to table? I just want to say, the consensus is we're tabling it until we actually have something specific to say, right?
Yeah.
That make sense to you?
Sure.
Okay, seconder?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling until we know what we're talking about?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see what's wrong with it.
It's a great way to
Page
put it.
10.
Okay, we need to go into executive session.
Public forum.
Around the board, does anyone have anything they
public forum.
want to deal with? Okay, we can do the public forum now. Is there anyone here who wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda, or that hasn't been spoken upon already? we do need to go in executive session. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Yes.
Yes. And we will return an open session only to adjourn.
How do you shut that off?